Now the next question. What becomes of the mental desires, etc.? We shall consider by reflecting upon the phenomena of birth. So many people are being born into this world with different capacities, with different inclinations, different propensities, different physiognomy, different phrenology, different construction of the brain. Some people with a heavy brain, others with a very light brain. Some people with a round head, others with an oblong head. How is that? Children of the same parents with diametrically opposite inclinations? How many parents are giving birth to Cain and Abel in the same house? Joseph and Joseph's brothers in the same house? Students going to college, living in the same boarding house, reading with the same professors, and yet with different inclinations, with entirely different tastes. One liking mathematics, another liking history. One a poet, another a dullard. Is there any difference in the inclinations or propensities of people or not? There is a difference. You cannot deny that. Some people are born precocious. They are smart even in their childhood. Others are very lazy even in their childhood. The Vedanta asks to what is the difference in taste or inclinations due? If you explain it by saying that it is God's will, that it is His work, that is no answer. That is simply evading the question. Evading the question is unphilosophical. That is declaring your ignorance. Explained by the established laws of science, if you say that it is God's will, that they are being born with these different desires from their childhood, you are violating the established law of science. Here you are practically asserting that something is coming out of nothing, and that is absurd, you know. In order to escape this difficulty, you will have to assume or accept that the child brings this difference of inclinations and propensities with him, as it were, from the other world. Children do not bring these different kinds of desires from nothing, but they are coming from something. They do not come into existence from nothing. They have been existing before. In other words, all these desires which people bring with them at their birth are brought from previous existent form. These desires existed a short while ago. Here we are considering the quisita of birth and the data of death. The Vedanta connects the two and says, when a man dies, his unfulfilled desires at the time of death could not be destroyed. Here was a stranger, born with different pronounced desires. His desires could not come out of nothing. Could it be that the desires, which were buried with the man in the grave, reappear with the new man that was born in a house? If you assume that, you escape from the terrible fallacy which you committed by saying that something is lost into nothing and something is come out of nothing. You escape that terrible difficulty by accepting this law of karma, as the Hindus call it, and the whole phenomena of death and birth becomes so natural, exactly in accord with the laws of nature, with the established laws of harmony in this universe. And again you see, you will, and again you see you will, have to accept this law of karma through another law of logic, what the philosophers call the law of parsimony. When a thing may be explained by natural and usual rules, we should not resort to far-fetched, unnatural, and hypothetical explanations. The law of karma gives you the most natural explanation, the plainest and most scientific. In preference to this, you should not resort to any extra or mundane explanations. Here comes a question. Scientists say, oh no, we will not explain the different propensities in new-born children by the law of karma. We ought not to resort to that. We can very easily explain all that by the law of heredity. The law of heredity will explain all that. But the Vedanta says the law of karma is not opposed to the law of heredity. It covers that. It explains that. But at the same time, the law of karma, in addition to explaining the law of heredity, also explains the apparent loss of mental energy at the time of death. The law of heredity does not explain that. So this law of karma has a greater claim on the attention of all scientists and philosophers than the law of heredity by itself. How does the law of karma explain the law of heredity? When a man dies, all his desires are apparently lost. The Vedanta says they are not lost. And when a candle is burning, the wick and the wax are lost. But when apparently lost by the law of chemical affinity, the carbon combines with the oxygen. The hydrogen combines with the oxygen, is attracted to it. So these desires, this mental energy or the subtle body of man after death, by a law of spiritual affinity, or we might call it material affinity just as well, combine. All your mental energy is drawn to a soil where the environment, the circumstances will be congenial to its growth, helpful to its fruition, and of great aid in its development. In other words, the compound or resultant of your desires or mental energy is drawn to a place where you will find congenial soil where all unutilized energies and unfulfilled desires will fructify and be realized. Thus does everybody select his own parents. We see again that when a man is alive, he is full of desires. Most of his desires are satisfied in his lifetime, but some are not. What will become of these? Will they be altogether ignored and lost? No. When a bud is seen in a garden, it gives a promise of flowering and blooming. The promise of the bud is carried out, satisfied. We see that even the desires of ants and lower creatures are satisfied. Why should the desires of man be frustrated? Why should man be mocked by nature or providence? He is not to be made fun of. His desires also must bear fruition. Most of our desires do bear fruition in our life. Thus, we see that it is the desires that become our acts. They are the motive power. But many desires are not fulfilled. What will become of them? The Vedanta says, O man, you are not to be mocked at by God. All your unfulfilled desires and unsatisfied energy must bear fruit. If not in this world, then in the next. Here's a question now. If we were existent in some previous birth, and if after death we have to reincarnate, how is it that we do not remember our past births? The Vedanta asks, what is memory? Here is Ram speaking to you, for instance, in a foreign language. Ram never lectured in India in the English language. While talking to you in English, not a single word of the mother tongue comes to Ram's mind. But is that Indian language entirely lost? No. It is there, but if Ram likes Arabic, Persian, or the other Indian languages, they can come to his memory at a moment's notice. Then, what is memory? Here is a lake of your mentality. All the Indian languages, Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit, are settled at the bottom of this lake in Ram's case. We can stir up the lake and bring up all these things to the surface at a moment's notice. And that is remembering the thing. You know a great many things, but all of them you are not conscious of. You can become conscious of them this moment by stirring up the lake of your mentality, by bringing them to the surface. They come into your mind. Similarly, the Vedanta says, all your births and past lives are there in your inner lake of consciousness, inner lake of knowledge. They are there at present. They are settled at the bottom. They are not on the surface. If you wish to recall your past births, that is not a difficult task. You may stir up the very bottom of the lake of your knowledge, and you can bring to the surface anything you like. You can remember even your past births if you like. But then it is not worthwhile to try the experiment, because according to another law, the law of evolution, you have to go onward. You have to go ahead. Let the dead bury the dead. Let the past bury its past. You have nothing to do with that. You have to go ahead.